It might be an updated piece. We're live. Good morning still on April 30th, and we're continuing our discussion on back to the tinting portion after a little brief over to bicycle safety, and now we're back into tinting. And Wes Ward, I noticed he's been on the watching or listening for a little bit, but thank you very much for joining. This is an update from your original pre agendas to talk a little bit about what you know about tinting, the change we made last year, the changes that are being proposed this year, and what your take on it is, and a little bit on quick on your background.
Well, as you mentioned, Wes Ward, I own Wes Ward Auto Repair in St. Johnsbury. I've been in business for 44 years and seen a lot of changes in the inspection manuals over the years. I know I was listening in with the state trooper that was talking about the equipment that would be required to test window tint. And we would have to obviously buy that same equipment and have it calibrated once a year just to make sure that it's working properly, and then training involved with that as well. And I know that there's a bill in front of this committee right now, I believe it's this committee, to make state inspections more affordable. And if we have to buy more equipment to be able to do those inspections, it's not going to make it more affordable. It's going to increase the price. And I know there was a couple of years ago when they changed the law to where they didn't consider the window tint to be a safety concern as far as the state inspection was concerned. And the same thing went with front license plates. For a while, we couldn't inspect a vehicle if it didn't have a front license plate unless it had one of the Vermont Strong plates, but it still had to have the front license plate behind that plate in order to be inspected. And if it was faded or any of those things, then you could reject the vehicle inspection for that as well. So it has created a lot of problems for us in the inspection business when we had to tell somebody, well, you don't have a front plate, so your car doesn't pass inspection, or now you have to pay us or pay somebody to remove the tint from your windows before we can inspect it, if that's the only thing that's holding it up from inspection. So it's, I feel like it's an enforcement issue, not inspection station issue.
And Wes, you've been doing inspections for 44 years?
Yes.
Has it gotten easier or harder, or is it a roller coaster through that whole time frame?
It's a roller coaster. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the inspector's opinion of a vehicle. Sometimes they will let window tint go 1 year and then the next year fail the car for that very item that passed the year before. So what we're seeing in our station here is that a lot of cars that are coming in that have window tint aren't inspected at all. And some of them that are inspected haven't been inspected for a couple of years. We have the same color sticker, so if you have an inspection that was done 4 years ago and you got a yellow sticker, a lot of people are not really paying any attention to that. And we've seen a lot of cars that come in that are either not inspected or way out of inspection because people just aren't paying attention to that. So it's an education on our end when we're talking to our customer about what their car needs to be able to pass inspection, and window tint really is a sore subject with a lot of folks.
And what sore subject to a lot of folks, and what do those folks think we should do about it?
Well, I'm in agreement that it's not great. You can't see in the cars, and if a vehicle has a windshield that's tinted, you can't see in or out of the car. You can't even see who's in it. So I agree that it's an issue, but it's been a real sore issue with people if you tell them, well, your car doesn't pass inspection, either you remove the tint and bring it back, or we remove the tint and charge you for that. So it seems to create a lot of tension.
And as a result, there's more vehicles on the road uninspected.
I see a lot of cars that are not inspected. A lot of them that come into our shop are either out of inspection by a few months and they may be here to be inspected, or they're just not inspected at all.
Representative Quirk?
What's the cost to remove tint if it's on both sides, driver's sides and passenger sides windows?
Typically, sometimes it does come off easily, but it takes typically a half an hour or more to do that. So you go from a $75 inspection to now a $150 or more inspection. And like I said, people really get upset about that. It's no different than the guys that come in with the pickup trucks and they have their small winter tires on for their state inspection. And then you see that truck the next day with the big wheels and tires that are sticking out past the fenders and a brand new sticker. So it's it happens that same way with window tint as well.
Or do you need a special piece of equipment, or could somebody do it at home with a blow dryer and heat it up and take it off themselves?
You can put it on yourself. It doesn't
No,
require
take it off. Like,
to take it off, you can take it off yourself as well.
Oh, okay. So I mean, big issue there.
So Wes, you're telling me, or what I'm gathering from what you're saying, you see cars pull in for inspection, your guys, or however you've been doing it, you pretty much know whether you have a problem or don't have a problem just walking over there before you even really get into the safety issues, whether it be tinting and tires or in general, or just experience with the type of vehicles and who it is. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So if you see a car with window tint and you know that it's not going to pass inspection, if they remove the tint, and doesn't mean that there's not other problems with the vehicle. And so now you're inspecting it twice. You're inspecting it once to let them know what the problems are. They're not obligated to have those repairs done at our shop, and they're also not obligated to have us remove that tint. But if they do the repair somewhere else and bring it back for inspection, then we have to start all over again.
Are you required to keep a record that you did inspect where you started in vehicles and where they failed or whatnot? Is there a record of that vehicle, or only if it passes?
There's a record if you have to enter the vehicle into the tablet, into the Vermont tablet, and you can put in there what caused that vehicle to fail inspection. And if they bring that vehicle to a different station to have it inspected, then that vehicle is flagged for those particular problems, and it would be up to the inspector at that point to make sure that those things have been corrected before the sticker can be put on the car.
Question over here, Representative Wells.
Yeah, first of all, Wes, I want to thank you on a side note to be for being part of our NSN broadcasts and coining the phrase over the years. Today's starting lineups brought to you by Wes Ward Auto Repair.
That's right.
That was a free one right there.
That's a free one there. Don't charge for that, Wes, and thank you very much. My question though was, should we just get rid of no tint at all? Just make it easier for you guys and make it easier for law enforcement, and just get rid of the tint on the front windows and the side front?
It would be easier. I know that there is a certain amount of tint allowed by the federal government. They will allow manufacturers to tint the windows up to a certain number. I don't know what that number is exactly, but that should be the only thing that's allowed. And I understand that there's some people that need tinted windows, and maybe that could be that little sticker that is in the windshield could be a little bit more obvious, but otherwise it's just easier not to have any tint at all.
And that federal standard, or that standard, you can see inside those vehicles. That's a low tint level. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Everybody understand that and clear as can be? Can you see your way through to solve this tint problem? All right, Wes, I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And
My pleasure. I'm happy to talk about any of these things, not just window tint, but any other inspection related items. I'm happy to talk to you about it at any time.
thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Well, now we've got our ledge council joining us for to start trying to go through, mark up, check off, move through what more we still have some sections we're going to hear more about. There's still other pieces that we're gonna go, but let's see if we can figure out sort of what I'd like to do at least is kind of get thumbs up on sections that we know are good to go, and then ones that we need more to, if we need more to dig in or more changes and more pieces. I don't know that anybody else had the list that I had back before, but and I'm working off of sort of the summary of sections, but we can also work off the actual language. But if there are, I guess I would be, we did the same thing on the T-bill, sort of section by section. I'm looking at the summaries, and when we went through it before, a lot of them were technical, a lot of them were driven out of the new or out of a council from DMV, and then in conjunction in communication with Damien, with Ledge Council. I sort of want to go through and check off ones that I'd say that we're all good to leave in the bill. That sounds kind of a plan of where we were at. I had sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 all as technical in nature and good to go. Or that there was no concern from our Ledge Council, and they were update the review of the DMV regs that was being driven by the Modernization Act and by the new programming piece. Does that sound about right, Damien?
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 are technical in nature. Adding in a couple of cases, really clarifying the law to reflect the existing practices. So first one, definition of pleasure car, we're clarifying that it does include plug-in electric vehicles, which I think was everyone's understanding, but wasn't necessarily clear from the statute. The next relates to the documents that you have to provide when you're getting a license. And this provides that you only need to submit all of those documents when you're submitting a new application, not for renewal. Section 3 is the anatomical gift or organ donor designation. And this is for non-driver identifications. My understanding, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the department is already doing this, but it wasn't in the statute. And so we're updating the statute to allow for that. I'm seeing a head nod. And then the third one is the disability placards for volunteer drivers. The current statute says that the placard has to say volunteer driver, and the department does not issue placards that are marked volunteer driver. So this is just updating the statute to clarify that. So technical in nature, but really reflecting current practice rather than doing any.
Everybody good with 1, 2, 3, 4? Thumbs are up all the way around.
Before we go on,
Okay, so those are.
For the record, I'm Damien Leonard from the Office of State Counsel. The other thing is I have been listening into the testimony this morning, and there were a lot of questions about what the federal standard is for window glazing. I happen to have the federal standards here with me, including the engineering document. So just really quickly.
We get to 30 now.
Yeah.
Well, it's fresh.
Before I forget, so the federal regulations, 49 CFR 571.205, provide that glazing materials for use in motor vehicles must conform to ANSI SAE standard Z26.1 1996. Clear as day.
Thanks for straightening that out.
So the ANSI standard is here. And if you dig through, eventually on page 12, you get to the visible light transmittance portion of the standard. And it goes on for another 30 pages after that. But it does say Safety glazing materials intended for use at levels requisite for driving visibility in a motor vehicle shall show the regular luminous transmittance of not less than 70% of the light at normal incidence. So in other words, 70% visible light transmission.
Or 30% tint.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can block out up to 30% of the light. And that's why manufacturers, the reason we went with last year, we cited to the federal regulation. Unfortunately, the federal regulation cites to a standard which governs everything from bullet resistant glass to your skylights in your, or, moonroof in your car. Not skylights, sunroof and moonroof. God. Clearly not enough coffee. Yeah, I'm thinking about my house.
Yeah, skylight.
But yeah, sunroof, moonroof in your car. It can include the back window of like a bus. So it's got all of these different types of glazing. But the important thing is that for something that is used for driving visibility, so right and left of the driver and forward, it's that 70% light transmission. You can have darker tinting elsewhere, but manufacturers, this is the NHTSA standard. So in order to manufacture and sell that car in the US, you have to meet this standard. Aftermarket, you can of course go beyond that, and some states allow that. But when you're producing it and selling it, it's at least produced to that standard. Now, if the dealer offers a window tinting deal, and in some states where you can have darker tint, that's something that you would pay for. So I used to live in the Southwest, and it was normal to have much darker tinting on the front windows of the car because of the sun down there. But up here, we go, this would be the federal standard. So last year you cited to the CFR, because of how complicated the engineering standard is, it didn't really provide the guidance that DMV needed to enact a clear standard. And so by going, the Senate's position was if we just say the visible light transmission we wanted and pull that out of this 44-page document, then that accomplishes the same thing. And so this is what your car coming from the dealer lot should have, not more than 30% tint on the windows.
The front,
The front driver and passenger side and windshield, and then the vent windows.
Just to clarify for me, so prior to this Senate bill that came over, it was 30%, 70% in our statute.
So the statute, as it reads right now, says that if the object is shading or tinting material, or this would be effective July 1, I believe. Yeah, it's effective July 1, 26. It says if the object is shading or tinting material and the visible light transmission of that shading or tinting material is not less than the level of visible light transmission required under 49 CFR 571.205 as amended. One of the really difficult things with that is because that cites to the ANSI standard, the level of allowable visible light transmission is lower if the windows are not required for driver visibility or if they're bullet resistant glass. So anytime you've got that, you can have a lower level of light transmission. So while we put this language in to try to provide a really clear federal standard that manufacturers are complying with, the problem that it creates for DMV is that there are actually multiple levels of visible light transmission under the federal standard, depending on the type of glass. And the inspection mechanic is not going to know if you have a BMW 7 Series protection with bullet resistant glass, or if you're driving a standard BMW 7 Series long or L.
I mean, that's
I mean, not common in Vermont, but I do know someone who had a 7 Series protection. So, believe it or not, I don't know why they felt the need, but I do know someone who had that car. So,
with the bulletproof glass?
with bullet resistant. So, but anyway, that's kind of the key thing here. So this 70% just drills down to the standard. That said, you've heard a lot of other testimony about the ins and outs of buying equipment, et cetera, to actually test for the standard. So that raises another set of policy issues. The language that you have in the bill is designed to get at the standard. The original DMV proposal was to take out the requirement from last year. So, and they can speak to that, and then you can ask other witnesses about costs and implementation and other things. There's been a lot of discussion about, the issues, the safety issues that come up with tinting. And as you know, it used to be a fail in our inspection system at VIA Tinting. We took that away. And now we're going back to a standard here to try to find, I'm assuming, a happy medium. Again, I can't speak for your intent, but so that just kind of brings you up to speed with that. So the standard is the percentage that you see in S123. Beyond that, it's up to you whether it makes sense from a policy standpoint. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That when we get to it.
But I thank you for indulging me and letting me get to that before I forgot that I brought over all of my materials from when the Senate dug into this. Oh,
Boy,
all right.
people say it's simple.
I just make it sound complicated.
And I don't know if Matt, if you had any comments on 1, 3, 4, we're going to move 5, and at any point the DMV wants to weigh in on any of these, as we're checking them off, they're staying there, it's going to stay in the language. And if we build our kind of strike all amendment or strike all to send back to the Senate, we're going to be building it as a strike all. We're taking out kind of the whole thing and send it back, basically affect a new bill with our changes. So we're on 5, and 5 was one of the areas we got some additional testimony. Amanda Churchill Kip came in, DCF came in. That section was added by Senate Transportation, not originally by the DMV. That was estimated in the JFO piece by about 15 grand on section 5. And we had that flagged as one of the additional testimony spots.
So that was to Ways and Means for more tests that we've heard from JFO, so.
We heard from the DCF on that need to make it simpler. My understanding of the testimony, it's a simpler process that
Yeah,
way.
it sounds like they're already doing it, but they're going through a complicated method to get the funding to help these folks pay for these important documents as you're transitioning out of DCF. I don't think we heard from DMV whether the discussion was, well, the DMV in their system, they'd be able to say, oh, you qualify, so therefore here's the cost. But we didn't, I don't think, have any testimony whether DMV was willing to sort of take that on.
Other than when the assistant director, deputy director, I don't say the title, but Matt, he was in and went through their version all the way down through the bill from their perspective, but we could certainly, I can't remember exactly that part of it.
Deputy Commissioner.
Deputy
Russo.
Yep.
Yeah, that was.
And the position of the DMV on section 5 is that
As far as the modernization project, I think once the language is set and enacted, we'll put it into the system.
and it was a $15,000 impact to the DMV budget, and I believe they testified they were okay with that.
Correct, yes. It's
Instead of-
it's same money, it's kind of DMV or DCF.
Okay.
Was there any other concerns? Is that one that
It just, because we're waiving a fee, does it have to do a drive-through Ways and Means? Or are we just letting them know of that section?
we are not, I guess we are reducing the DMV, the transportation fee on a fee that used to be paid through the DCF budget. So the net to the state is the same. It's not a new reduction. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a new reduction. These people that are eligible for this are all paid through
Okay,
DCF. We're gonna now take that and pay it through DMV. So the net to the Vermont the same cost to the state, but it is a move of money that now hits our purview versus the human services purview.
It'll definitely go ways.
But it goes to ways.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
But I'd like to make sure that I do see if everybody's hands is, people want to leave this in? Yes or no? Do we want to leave this in to have the DMV pay for this or not? So 1, 2, 3, 4, I'd say at least 8, 9, 10.
Question.
Yes.
So on the fees, do we want to ask, is it DCF to put aside some money to come into the transportation budget because we're not collecting that money? I mean, because we're seeing a net revenue decline in transportation budget.
And I would say that for consistency of everything that we've done, I would love to do that. What I heard from our JFO and his testimony piece is $15,000 over 800, but I am absolutely on board with your thinking. And their testimony is that this is a de minimis on our $893 million budget, but I like where you're at.
Might be more of a headache to set all that.
Yeah.
Are we out? So we're good with this, and then I guess we had the 10 plus. Number 6, we also heard additional testimony related to my understanding anyway, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the impact of trying to in effect to marry up the discounts that we give to municipalities on registrations currently on internal combustion engine vehicles but are used for municipalities. We would give the same discount on registration on the plate fee for an electric vehicle that they were to buy. In effect, treating municipalities the same for EVs as they do for their current purchases. Is that my understanding of the?
Yes.
I just add a note that to the LCT for a follow-up. Do we need to,
They were here.
were they here?
And they did, and they testified that, although they also were exactly the same spot as Representative White, they don't want to see any reduction. Transportation funds, this seemed to be the de minimis and the consistency in treatment of municipal vehicles that they're municipality. We're not looking to make money off the municipalities. We're just looking to cover the costs.
Yeah, no, maybe the ultimate question is should they be exempt at all? And if we're fine with them being exempt, then this points in which policy. So
Are we
so
all,
fine with me.
everybody's clear with this one? Everybody's good? Okay. Number 7, I had sort of already checked off, that was for reasons driven out of the update, et cetera. There are only 3 Vermonters that take advantage of this particular piece. It only impacts 3 Vermonters at this point, and there's not anticipation that that's going to increase anything at all substantially. Number 7 was basically a part of the law for 3 veterans that qualify under this section. Is the note that I had, and I had it checked off as being very de minimis. Does anybody have any questions on 7, or is there any comments or concerns?
No, I
on
can confirm it's 3 veterans, none of which have electric vehicles.
It's just consistency in the law, right? If you have electric or not.
Yep. That's my understanding. We got thumbs up on that. Okay. Look at that. We got through my first page. Section 8 is a little more complicated. I think that it's really got 2 parts to it. There's an A related to SSI and SSDI. We did take testimony from the Vermont Aging Disability ADIL. But we also took testimony on DCF on the second portion related to youths transitioning out of foster care into their own. And the 2 different, the part A was over $308,000 plus or minus on the JFO portion. The B section was part of the grand total of 15,000 related to the DCF. So I have a view that there's sort of 2, although the issues related around the operator's license and waiving the fees there, we sort of already went ahead with the DCF portion, but The SSI is a new benefit, and SSDI, those are new benefits that aren't currently being enjoyed. And they are of a substantially different number. And the testimony we got was whoever was driving for it either is no longer with the DMV, and it certainly didn't come from the group that we heard from on the piece. So Section 8 is a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit an A and a B in my perspective, but if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, I think that section's got two
Yeah,
different
I
components.
mean, I guess, after hearing the testimony and hearing the fact that they didn't really know too much about it, or where that came from, and they weren't promoting it, and they didn't really, I mean, they couldn't provide examples of issues or problems that they were trying to solve. Obviously, they would like it if it was given to them, but it wasn't something that they were really, unfortunately promoting, and I don't know if they even really knew that the ramification. I think the 300,000 was sort of like an estimate, I guess, with everything, but they didn't know the true impact that was gonna have, so just sort of based on all those variables, I would recommend actually to eliminate this from our budget.
And I would agree. I mean, and I'd sort of argue that if it's 300,000, it might be used somewhere else to help
Yeah.
people on SSDI or SSI. So rather than taking it from transportation, it feels like, we're trying to help people. That's great. And there's a lot of people with need, but sometimes, hey, let's see if we can get it out of the DMV to help them. And that doesn't seem like the best approach, considering $300,000 toward federal grants and funding is gonna be multiplied.
So 300,000 is just the portion for this.
Part
that's
A.
it, for Part A.
It's 15.
And the SSI and SSDI is 300 plus thousand for that section. The section B related to the kids in DCF, the transition out of foster care, that was part of a grand total of 15,000. There was 208, there are 208 eligible people in the foster care program that would benefit from it on that section B. But the SSI was 10,000 people. And I would add, I appreciate other people want to weigh in, but if there is a collective push that this is something that's really driven, I encourage whomever was driving it beforehand to come back to the table and build the case and make it happen, and also understand whether that money should come out of human services or general fund, and why helping that group should or shouldn't come out of transportation funds. I will say that I would completely close the door, but that's my take on it. Representative Case?
I think if you can't afford your license, I mean, can you afford the car? Can you afford fixing it? I mean, it sounds like to me, if you can't afford your license, you're one breakdown away from walking anyway. I just don't mean to be harsh like that, but we need the money. $300,000 is it's a good chunk of money, I think. It is in my world, I know that.
Yeah, I would propose that we go forward with Part B and drop Part A. That would be section.
Anybody else want to comment?
When you say Part B, you mean D, the individuals under 23 years of age?
Yes.
Who are in the care and custody of the. So that we want to move forward with. That sounds like it's an 8-step process. It's.
Yes, consistent with what we already did in the
Yeah.
previous section. That was sort of part of that. One's related to driver's license, one's related to operator or the other IDs and whatnot. But
I concur with that, to support this Part D and not support Part B and C. A, B,
Or
C.
A and B, yeah, right. The first part,
Individuals receiving supplemental security income.
okay, Representative
Yeah, I was just would say that, absent a really compelling argument, I would reluctantly agree to let that go. Be a nice thing to do. Try to be zero different things.
and I would,
The money could go to public transit,
Well, there you go. I think that that's part of priorities, and I think that that was what to me, when I heard Representative Pouch, so many similar things, saying there might be a better way to spend that money, but I would certainly also say that I have mentioned, if I haven't mentioned it online, I've mentioned it to multiple people. Part of after we get past our bills is, I think we as a committee ought to really look at drafting a letter to the Secretary of Transportation, to the governor, for items that we'd like to be considered in the next year's budget that they build. We'll be here for the biennium, so we'll all be back most likely in the same spot. And if there's things we'd like to see considered and worked on, I think that will be one of our plans after the fact. So after we get through these bills, yes, sir.
I just sort of have a technical correction. Obviously, the Senate passed all these things that had money ramifications. Were they reflected in the T-bill? I mean, where did they come up with this money?
So you will see in the T-bill that is at third reading in the Senate today, that there is a provision in the T-bill that would require the transportation fund to have an unobligated fund balance going into next fiscal year of just over $600,000 to pay for what was in SB 86 and the fee reductions that are in this bill. So obviously
46 was the logging.
that was the logging bill. So if you're not going forward with logging and you're reducing these, that section can either be reduced or done away with, depending. And that's something that you can figure out when that bill arrives in the House.
Sure, and that would be addressed in the obviously in the community conference for the transfer. So $600,000 is in play.
Yeah, I think it's like 646 or something like that, is the unobligated balance that's set out in that bill. And that was intentionally to accommodate or to address the leftover amounts. There's also, we'll talk about this when it comes over, but the way funds are proposed to be moved around in the Senate version of the T-bill would also reduce some pressure on the T-fund. I don't know that it actually addresses all of the needs, but they're using some one-time funding to pay for certain things.
That's another conversation how that all works, but okay, so it was just in the T.
Yeah,
All right,
and
so-
it preview of coming attractions when we do that on Thursday or Friday.
Preview of coming attractions, yes.
Yeah,
That's on the agenda too. is
Yeah,
preview of coming
that was my teaser
I
trailer.
want to get through as much of this as we can. So we're instructing you to, in your strike all rewrite, that we're going to keep the related to foster care and not SSI and SDI.
So that's the first real change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I would say in
Say
section,
that again, please, Matt.
that section 8 has two different parts, and we are going to send back a strike all new bill or new version back to the Senate. And we are not going to include the language related to the SSI or SSDI. We are going to keep the language related to those transitioning out of foster care into the real world. The real world into the world.
I just have one quick question.
Yes,
Can a 14-year-old get a motorcycle permit?
14, no.
I mean, this says 14.
No, so it's-
He shall be due for a motorcycle endorsement for, what's the other one?
So for an individual who's
Oh,
under
after
23 years
attaining
of
14 years
age, who was in the care and custody of DCF after attaining 14 years of age. So it's capturing a group of foster children who were in foster care as they were reaching the age where they would begin to qualify for a learner's permit.
Right.
And then are in this program, but it doesn't change the age requirements for a learner's permit.
Okay, but can they get a motorcycle's license when they're 15? What's a learner's permit now? 15? What is
You have to have-
the age for when you can get a motorcycle permit?
You have to have a driver's license first.
Mhm.
Okay, so 16 you can get.
That's my understanding.
That's what I used to
The
be now,
DMV
16.
can comment on this or not?
That sounds right. I don't have a motorcycle, so, but
I was 16.
I would say that's correct, but I reserve the right to think that I was wrong.
But
This
I mean-
doesn't change.
Of course, right.
Yeah.
You also need
No,
to
but I don't know
identify
if
yourself.
14 years, like I said, after 14, I don't think a 14-year-old can get a learner's permit for a motorcycle, but maybe they can.
The
Time out.
14.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So I'm Matt Costick, the Director of Special Programs at the.
For the record, there we go. Back to where we were.
I was just saying, the 14 is just how you qualify for the DCF. You know, what are the kids who qualify for these, the people who qualify for these programs? That helps define it. I think that's what it is.
Representative Tolman?
I was just gonna add, I think I was remembering the person from DCF who testified said that she couldn't recall any times they've actually covered it. I think it's just a part of the program that they theoretically would, but anyway, that's just what I recall from mentioning.
I agree with you. That's what I recall, now that you mentioned it, Art. But it is possible that they would reimburse them if they, but now we would pay for them if they were. Are we good to move on to section 9? Or that was where we were, was in section 9, is it right there? Are we keeping the portion are we keeping section 9 as is? Everybody okay with that? Yes? No? Thumbs up on
Yes.
9? Thank you. 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had,
Last two sections I have, these are the ones that have to go to Ways and Means, so.
okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Section 10, we had, that was recall the testimony, so that's putting in the law the current practice. And a request from the DMV on that, and that we had checked off as a correction to match what current practice was. Do you recall that any differently, or?
That's my understanding. This is just adding that the permit has to have a photograph on it. So this is updating. Yeah.
Everybody's good with that piece then? Yes. All got their hands up and all shaking their heads. Cool. And number 11, I had a note here. I'm not sure. I know that our alleged counsel was going back and forth. I have not looked at my emails in a little bit, but I don't know if you guys were working on some of the languages. I took section 11 was one of the several ones that I took to judiciary in a copy, and Sheriff came back to me and said that they were from judiciary, they were okay with that. There was some discussion. I don't remember exactly which sections. They came back to alleged counsel about some newer language on sentencing, but that wasn't necessarily this section. Maybe
So,
a little later down.
Ben Novogroski and I have been in touch because he's working on H44, which is the impaired driving bill, which overlaps. Is it H44? I think it's in H44. It overlaps with this because it includes the Title IV provision for the Judicial Bureau on deferring sentences and masking with respect to commercial driver's licenses and commercial learner's permits. The last question, which I didn't copy Matt on, I copied the commissioner, deputy commissioner, and general counsel at DMV on, was their DMV had recommended language for Title IV, which would have provided that in the very last sentence of section 11, so lines, I don't know what line it is for yours because I've been marking mine up, but it's basically no court, etc., may defer imposition of a sentence or judgment if the defendant holds a commercial driver's license, commercial learner's permit, that's the addition here, or was operating a commercial vehicle when the violation occurred, and they are charged with violating any state or local traffic law other than a parking violation. The provision for H44 that is being added in the Senate is, let's just see, there we are, provides that it would be any parking, vehicle weight, or vehicle defect violation which reflects the requirements under federal regulations. So the federal regulations basically say you can't mask, except these are the exceptions to our requirement that you can't have masking of traffic offenses for CDL drivers. And our law is consistent with that in saying only parking violations, because you can always set a lower or a higher floor. But the proposal in H44 would actually make Title IV inconsistent with Title 23, in that it says parking weight or vehicle defect violations versus just parking violations here. So the question for DMV, and so you may want to hold this open to get an answer, is whether we should go ahead and update this to parking weight or vehicle defect violation. Just to make everything consistent, assuming H44 moves through. And we would still be in compliance with federal law either way. But that's the only question here. So we've been back and forth. We've determined there's no conflict between the bills. Everything that it overlaps between this bill and that bill, the language is consistent in a way that, assuming they both pass, when we update the statutes, it will just mesh perfectly. It's either the identical language or we're modifying different subsections with language that's not going to conflict with what's happening in the other bill.
I just moved to take it out, just put it in H4. I mean, why are we both doing it? If one's moving, just have them do it.
This is not in that bill.
That's what I'm saying, just have them put it, I mean, it hasn't passed out yet, or it's still in the same.
It moved out of Senate Judiciary and is going to the floor.
Oh,
So it's
too late.
Yeah, so that's kind of the question here. We're trying to make sure we don't inadvertently update one, so we have to make a correction to
It
that.
was just put it in one bill, but anyways, all right.
Yeah. So it might want to just leave this one open and wait for feedback from DMV this afternoon.
Well, and we'll make sure that our DMV people are aware. They'll come back to us. Section 12 was a slight expansion rule for the commissioner to waive out of state in the cases where people move here, whether he wants to accept a driver's license, a junior operator's license from another jurisdiction, and that didn't have that ability before. We had sort of checked it off as a pretty minor occurrence that administratively would be better that he's able to do it if he could. Are we all okay with that or not? Still okay with that? Okay, great. We're up through 12. We only have one left open. One of those open. There we go. There was some discussion on the next section regarding this scheduling fee. That they're not charging, and then the Senate Finance amended the language to provide that the fee would be charged beginning on or before July 1st of next year, 2026, and could be waived for good cause. So the secretary has the ability to waive it, but they have originally proposed to eliminating the schedule, but they're not charging it now. As it is, people are putting multiple payments with that. We had checked it off as okay to go, but my memory's a little fuzzy on this, and we're good to go. So we're all good to go.
Well, they are charging 29, that's not a new fee, right?
I don't think it's new, but
It's not new, so what happens, you pay a $29 fee. And if you show up for your license, that fee goes to the test, right? So we're not actually collecting it in that sense, we're just rolling it over to the cost of the test. If you don't show up, then you would forfeit the fee. However, if you make another appointment, then that would roll over to that. So it's almost like a phantom fee, and it needs to be reconfigured. And we plan to do that, the upgrade of our system, and then start collecting it as soon as possible.
So from what I remember, the reason for this piece was to prevent a Vermonter from making multiple appointments
Correct, yes.
and then missing all but one.
All but one.
And so we must not have been charging a $29 fee for people to make multiple appointments in the past. Right?
Right, so.
Yeah.
Because the fee would just end up not being technically collected. just sort of be a placeholder. It wasn't officially collected, so people sort of walk through that loophole, if you will, to take it upon themselves to make multiple appointments. So I could make an appointment for tomorrow and then 3 weeks from now, just in case I fail tomorrow. Or I'll make 6 appointments, whichever one works best for me at the time it shows up. I'll go to, and the other ones I won't.
So can you just clarify for me, do we have the $29 fee is not new, it just wasn't being enforced?
Correct, yes. It's not new.
Okay.
The other thing we're looking at is just taking away the ability to make 7 appointments. So you make one, the system won't allow you to make another one until you do something with your first one, right? Whether that be cancel it or show up for it or whatever it be.
Or lose your $29 because you haven't shown up.
Right, so if you make your appointment, you won't be able to make another one, and if you don't show up, you will lose your $29.
Unless you get a note from your doctor.
Unless you have a, right,
Unless you had an accident on the way.
or other good cause, not doctor related, whatever that may be. Death in the family or.
Do we want to add some language about intent that if it doesn't say anything about this is going to prevent people from making multiple appointments and that, because that is part of the intent. As far as I understand.
Okay.
I thought,
Mr. Charles, anybody have a
So
thought on that or a comment for that?
I think the DMV is already planning to change their system so that you can only make one appointment. And this really gets to part of the issue here has been the ability for the DMV. If you'll notice, the struck out language at the very end of the section provided that the commissioner may waive the scheduling fee until the department is capable of administering the fee electronically. That's related to that modernization. As part of that modernization, they're taking away the ability to make multiple appointments. So I think
so it's implicit.
yeah, I'm not sure we need the extra language.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Okay.
Okay. That's what we're doing, trying to make sure that we're comfortable with every piece. So are we all comfortable with section 13? That's thumbs up. Okay. Section 14, and be our last one, I guess, or we're right at noon, I guess. 14 is different than the 15, 16, 17, right? 14 is something we have to do to conform with the federal law. 15, 16, 17 is something that we are doing. And is that my understanding there?
that is correct. So the only change in 14 that we have to do is the change at the very, very end in subdivision H1, where we change the phrase privilege card to non-real ID. Everything else is just cleaning up the language so we're clear that it's the applicant or the commissioner or whoever it is.
And we have to do that to conform with federal law is what this says. And that
Yeah.
it's not a policy choice or anything else. It's clean.
No.
So I guess I'd say that we're all set with 14. And then we will be picking this back up on committee, the next portion that's on the committee discussion after we go back and work on that license plate pilot